Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Stella, je suis étudiante en première année au doctorat en neuropsychologie à l'Université de Montréal, mais en fait aujourd'hui je vous présente mon projet de thèse Honors que j'ai fait au baccalauréat à l'Université Bishops sous la supervision de Claude Charpentier et Suzanne Hood à l'Université Bishops et Rétine Jaboué qui m'a aussi permis d'avoir accès à la bourse de soutien financier du CDRV pour entamer les premières étapes de ce projet. Alors comme mentionné, ma présentation va être bilingue, c'est-à-dire que mes slides sont en français, mais je vais présenter en anglais. Alors, allons-y. As we know, approximately 19% of cases of Alzheimer's disease have been attributed to cognitive inactivity. In addition, 40% of cases of neurocognitive disorders could be prevented, as we saw previously today with the famous Livingston model I'm sure some of you are familiar with. And some of these modifiable factors that are represented by the flowery part of the brain here include social participation, as well as cognitively stimulating activities. Therefore, we might wonder what might be some cognitively engaging and socially stimulating interventions that we can use to either promote or prevent, but promote healthy aging and prevent the onset of neurodegenerative diseases in older adults. And therefore, what are these cognitive interventions? They are behavioral approaches that aim to promote or even increase cognition. They are used in various populations, but here we'll be focusing in older adults, obviously. And there are three subtypes of cognitive interventions, which are cognitive training, cognitive stimulation, and cognitive rehabilitation. In this case, I was particularly interested in cognitive stimulation interventions because they encourage the participation in activities that are both cognitively and socially stimulating by working with some leisure-based activities like the ones that are shown on the screen, and among them are reading. Some important strengths of cognitively stimulating activities is that they're more fun, more engaging, and therefore increase adherence to these type of interventions and motivation. And so, as mentioned, bibliotherapy uses reading as a therapeutic means to improve well-being. It has been used in various different populations, has even been shown to have effects on depression and anxiety, as well as promote social relationships when done in a book club format, so in a group format. And as well, reading is a cognitively stimulating activity, and studies have shown that reading in mid and late life may even offer protection against developing Alzheimer's disease up to 7 years later. The Heartside Book Club are the materials that I'll use in this study, and they have been developed by researchers at Harvard University, tested a little bit in the States, but looking more at effects of quality of life and enjoyment, but they didn't look at cognitive outcomes, and neither was it done in a book club format, which I did here. Here are some examples of what the materials look like. So these are just two screenshots of one of the short books. And as you can see, there are some discussion questions embedded directly in the text too, to promote some discussions among the participants. And this is what our little setup looked like. So each participant had their own copy of the book, and we took turns reading pages and discussing the questions as they came up, and as well as discussing whatever topics they felt like discussing as well during these readings. And so the objectives of our study were twofold. The first was to explore the efficacy of this intervention on both cognitive and social engagement. And the second was to determine the feasibility of this intervention among older adults who had subjective cognitive decline and living in a retirement community in Eastern Ontario. The study was originally designed to have a mixed methods approach, but due to our small sample size, I'll be focusing in this presentation on our qualitative findings from our focus groups. And here are our little participant description. So as you can see, they were all residents from a retirement community in Ontario, aged 65 years and older. They had subjective cognitive complaints, but no formal diagnosis of a neurocognitive disorder. And so here are our qualitative discussion questions. They took place in the focus group format, and then we did qualitative reflexive thematic analysis based on our findings. And the questions pertain to what they liked about the book club, what maybe they didn't like as much, if they had any recommendations for future implementations or iterations of this type of club. And then we also asked them about perceived efficacy, so if they saw any effects on their cognitive engagement and social engagement at various different levels. And I put some examples here, but we really did want participants to bring up whatever they felt was subjectively important for them. And here's our timeline. So as you can see, I had two groups, one of 5 and one of 4 participants. We had 4 weeks of bi-weekly sessions, so a total of 8 sessions that were an hour each. Our qualitative focus groups happened directly following the 8th and final session, and then our quantitative measures of cognitive functioning and loneliness were at pre and post-test. And now for the results. So we analyzed the qualitative data following methods from Braun and Clark, which are quite used in this field. And we did a reflexive thematic analysis, which is comprised of 6 primary steps, and really focused on participants' subjective experiences, which is what we wanted to capture. As I was the primary investigator researcher, as well as I had a key role in the coding, and I was the facilitator of these clubs, I had quite an active role in generating these themes. And I also collected field notes throughout the intervention. So although our focus groups happened only at one time point at the very end, the field notes did help inform these themes that were generated. So as you can see on the screen, these are our 2 main themes and sub-themes. And to kind of draw out these themes, I thought to present a few quotes for some of the sub-themes. And so for our first major theme, the key underpinning was the value of sharing stories, and this theme here is about the efficacy of the intervention. So for the first sub-theme on perceived cognitive engagement, we had one participant who said, "Discussing in a group about different subjects was interesting and made you think of things that you did remember, and everyone would talk about something you're to remember. Oh, okay, I remember this and I remember that." So while participants were discussing and reading together, they were able to kind of build on each other's memories and remember things from, when they were growing up. So it was very interesting to hear that, and that participants really did notice their engagement of their memory at that point. For another one here, on their sub-theme of social engagement this time, we had one participant who said, "I knew Alice before," who was another participant in the club, "but I know her more now from being in this group. Just like George and Maureen. Now I learned how to play Skippo with them." So now, even lasting outside of the walls of the book club, they do play cards together weekly. And finally, from the same sub-theme, anything that gets people together is good. It's a good thing. And I think we can all agree it's a good thing. For our second major theme on the feasibility of the intervention, we looked at it through a lens of implementation, which ties in directly with our discussion, so I kind of incorporated these 2 together, and selected to present 2 key recommendations. We have many, many more, so I'll be open to discussing them afterwards, but I selected 2 to present today. The first would be to create a warm, welcoming environment to really favor the sharing of these stories, because as we saw, the sharing of personal stories was a key underpinning to the efficacy in both terms of social relationships and cognitive engagement, which is linked to reminiscence therapy for those who might be familiar with that in the literature. And then the second recommendation, or maybe more of a path, was that we noticed this richness of intergenerational interactions with a younger program facilitator. As I was a program facilitator, it was interesting for them, as it was for me, to really be able to share those stories, hear what it was like for them, for example, growing up, 60, 70 years ago, and how it was for me growing up 20 years ago. So that was one of our key strengths. And finally, I think we can say that cognitive stimulation interventions such as bibliotherapy represent a promising, feasible approach to incorporate both social and cognitive aspects that is relatively cheap, easy to implement, flexible, and that people enjoyed. So thank you. Je suis disponible à répondre à vos questions en français et en anglais.